Hello again, dear scholars of computation. In the previous video, when we were announcing what we were going to do today, we forgot to mention the context menu, so that is what we're going to start off with. We have a video on how to do that in React, and this time we are going to do it in Bolero. In React, we had to do some ungodly thing where we had to extract the reference for the underlying DOM object, and had to put event handlers on the global window object to react to the click events, and managed that using effect hooks. As a result, it took us a few hours to grasp how to do that, as well as fix the errors in the reference code. In Blazor and Bolero, however, what we will do is just download the context menu component from some library. We'll use a library called MudBlazor to do it. This kind of workflow is much more in line with our preferences. We don't know if there is some React library we could have downloaded that would have given us a context menu, but the two vids at the top of YouTube all did it by hand, so we didn't bother checking too deeply. Honestly, it is little things like this that make us think we made the right choice in going with the .NET WebAssembly frameworks. Anyway, what we are doing on the screen is setting MudBlazor up. Like with the diagram component, we have to add the CSS and script files the library needs to function. In the previous video, we discovered that the right place to do that is in the server index file rather than the client main HTML file. Right now, the only thing we are wondering is where to install the package. Interestingly, the Blazor projects in .NET 6 are all in a single project, but in the previous version they had the server and the client sides much like the Bolero project we are using now. Since we are using WASM, we are going to put the MudBlazor package in the client folder, and if it turns out that we need to plug the middleware into the server, we'll put it there later. If we picked the server-side rendering option, would the client service just get ignored, or would it be enough? Anyway, the ideal place to start is the client. Now the only thing we have left is to add the 3 MudBlazor components into the main layout file. This would be straightforward in Blazor, but here we have two choices, either the index.html in the server file or on the client side. This time around, we are going to pick the client side. We'll make a hole in the main template and fill it with the necessary components. We don't think we can put Blazor components directly in the HTML template, so that's what we are going to try. Correct us if we are wrong in the comments about this last part. We think this should be all that we need to make use of MudBlazor in this project. We are a bit worried about the Bulma CSS library being in the index, and hope the CSS styles won't end up clashing. We think that Blazor has something on CSS isolation, but we haven't looked into it yet. At any rate, we'll get rid of the template code eventually. Right now we are torn between playing with layouts and just plugging in the menu and seeing where that gets us. Let's just go with the latter, straight to our goal. If we run into difficulty, we'll pivot into doing baby steps. In the future, we are probably going to be using the MudBlazor library a lot, and we'll have all the time we need to get acquainted with it. Yeah, we inserted the service into the client as well, and the exception has gone away. Too bad the diagram component still isn't showing up. We'll try making the activator a div with some text, just to see if that appears. Yeah, the component appears, but clicking on it is doing nothing. We'll play around with it, but we aren't sure why nothing is happening. We'll pause the screencast here and try commenting out some of the CSS files in the Bolero index page and see where that gets us. We'll be back soon. Bolero is a wash for us. We'll switch to Blazor. Right now, we can't even get a vanilla Blazor button to work, let alone the diagram component with MudBox. We need some time to gather our thoughts. There is probably a fix for this error here, as well as using the MudMenu with the diagram component, but it is too difficult for us to see it. Bolero's DSL for templating HTML in F# is really hard to work in. If it was well typed, it might be competitive with Blazor, but right now it is over a dozen times harder to use. We wouldn't think we'd ever say this, but we are going to have to recommend C# for front-end development here. If only instead of having this untyped builder DSL, it would let us set the properties of the Blazor components directly. We once wrote a DSL for desktop UI applications using reactive extensions that did exactly that. Instead of computation expressions like this, it'd pass the component in a lambda and all property settings were done using subscriptions on observables. It was somewhat tedious to use, but everything was well typed. It wasn't on par with Elmish, but it was far better than manipulating the UI components directly. The Bolero DSL, on the other hand, is complete shit. Anyway, what we are showcasing you on the screen here is something you might want to look at if you are working on desktop UI applications for some legacy software and want to make your life a lot easier. Reactive extensions are really great for building UIs, but in our case, it wouldn't be worth it to use them over something like Blazor. Maybe instead of ditching Bolero 100%, we could do the Blazor components in a C# library and import them, but we don't know how to compile the Razor files into C# class libraries right now. Neither do we know how to handle them raw, that is, treat them like a desktop UI library. Both of those should be possible, but it is not worth going out of our way to do front-end with F#. We'll leave F# for the back-end. We'll open a new project in Blazor. We'll overwrite the old one with it later. For now, let us focus on making MudBlazor work. Then we will bring in the diagrams library. We already showed how to do the Elmish pattern using mailbox processors in one of the previous videos, and just now using reactive extensions as a part of the Lithe library, so we can easily re-implement it with Blazor should we want to. It is as we said, we love functional programming, but we don't want to tell you that you should bash your head against the wall until things work. We'll converge to a style that makes the best of C# and F#. We really do want to make life easy on you. That means no writing JS bindings for things that should be in the standard library. And strict typing. And great editor support. Let's end this video here as we are tired. We'll open an issue later on the MudBlazor repo and hopefully the problem will resolve itself. It is not turbo important. Even if we can't get the context menu to show when clicking on a node properly, we might be able to ditch the current way and do it using the diagram control events instead. During the pause period, we gave Bolero one more try, but we have no idea how to deal with the menu not showing up. Anyway, if you are an F# aficionado, now you know what kinds of troubles you'll run into when trying to use Bolero. The compilation for Blazor is 3 times faster than for Bolero, and its hot module reloading is better as well, so we'll use it. I guess we'll be finding out how good the C#F# interop is in the future videos. Right now we are basically done with the setup, and the context menu being a bit janky is not going to stop us. Tomorrow we'll make the components and then finally move on to the compilation steps. If you sympathize with all the blunders we made to get to this point, do leave a like and subscribe. Hopefully you found something useful in this vid. From here on out, there will be no looking back. We'll meet again soon.